Good morning, Shabbat Shalom. We're here again, Crossover Ministry, and I hope you're going to enjoy our study today. And we're going to be talking about the 10 plagues. So when we say 10 plagues, usually we remember what happened in Egypt, right? So you have 10 of those, but we're going to kind of like deep into all the plagues, and we will see from our study that this is like a decreation. So in Genesis, God created, but in Exodus, this is the decreation. It's kind of like the opposite picture of what you see in Genesis 1. And so, first of all, the word plague in Hebrew means to strike. So, usually when we say plague, it's associated to disease, to sickness, right? But the word literally means to strike. Okay, so let's start with Exodus 1. In Exodus 1:10, it says that the Pharaoh who did not know Joseph, okay, he said, "Come, let us act wisely." In another translation, it says, "Let us deal craftily with them," the children of Israel, "lest at any time they be increased. And whensoever war shall happen to us, there also shall be added to our enemies." And so here, the language that you see there, especially that phrase, "let us deal craftily," it should take us back to the garden when Genesis 3 describes the serpent as a crafty creature. Okay, so here, the new Pharaoh in Egypt is pictured as like the Nahash in the garden. Okay, so then in Exodus, you will see how the Pharaoh wanted to afflict the people of Israel. And you'll see that in Exodus 1, 11 and 12, where they afflicted the children of Israel. But instead of diminishing in number, they actually increased and grew. And then another one in verse 15 of chapter 1, where the two midwives, Shiphrah and Puah. Now, by the way, these names, Shiphrah means bright, and Puah means to sparkle or to glitter. Now, the names of these women actually points to the woman in the garden. And so here they are pictured as the women who overcame the temptation or the testing of the Nahash, because in Exodus 1:15, they were told to kill the boys that were born. So, and they didn't. And so, again, the Israelites, they grew in number. And then the last one in Exodus 1:22, when Pharaoh commanded all the sons that are born in Egypt among the Hebrew people to be thrown into the Nile River. And that he actually succeeded, because they were thrown and killed, except for one, who is Moshe. Okay, and so in Genesis 1:28, if you look back, the promise and the command is for creation and for man to be fruitful and increase and to fill the earth. And this is actually given to both animals and human. And so here in Exodus 1 is the opposite, where the new Pharaoh, who pictures the Nahash, wanted to kill and afflict the Israelites. Okay, so and then in Exodus, there is this phrase that we will always read, and they will know, or you will know. So Yahweh wanted himself to be known, wanted his character, his nature to be known among the people, and not only among the Israelites, but also to the whole of Mitzrayim, or the whole of Egypt. And you will find at least 7 of those "I know" phrase in there. Okay, so then now let's look at the 10 plagues. The 10 plagues actually are divided into three groups. So there are the first triad, which is plague 1, 2, 3, and then the second triad is 4, 5, 6, and the last triad is 7, 8, 9. Now, plague number 10 is completely separate from all the 9 because of how it affected everybody. Okay, so then let's look at the first triad. Now, plague 1, plague 4, and plague 7, these are the intro to the triads, because if you look at it and read it, plague 1, 4, and 7, they all started with in the morning. Okay, so Moshe was commanded by God to go to the river, or to go to the house of Pharaoh, or wherever. Yeah, so it's always in the morning. Okay, so let's start with plague number 1. Plague number 1 is the turning of the water into blood. Okay, so what is this pointing back to? Okay, so in Exodus 1, because the plague starts in Exodus 7. In Exodus 1, we know that the boys that were born among the Hebrews were thrown into the river. So then this one is a kind of like a counterpart. Okay, counterpart of that, where the blood of the children were calling out to Yah. And so now the first plague plus the Nile is actually where the Egyptians depend for their economy, their livelihood. Okay, the Nile River is very important in the economic life of the Egyptians. So this plague lasted for 7 days. So just imagine if you don't have anything to, take your livelihood from, or like drink your water from. So that's gonna be hard. Okay, so then that plague 1 is like an attack on the jugular. That is how God attacked Egypt. Okay, the very first plague. And then the second plague is about the frogs. Now we know that frogs are amphibians. So amphibians are creatures that can live both in the water and in the sea. Now in Genesis 1, 4 through 9 and verse 14, it will talk about how God in the beginning divided separated light and darkness. And so here in verse 4, you will see how God divided and separated the darkness from light. In verse 6, you see the separation of the waters. Verse 9 is the separation of the water and the sea. And then 14, you will see how there are signs, the moon, the sun, they are separated. And so the lesser light will rule the night, the greater light will rule the day. So there is a boundary. Okay, so boundary is part of the order of creation. And so when you look at the frogs, that is a reverse of what's happening in Genesis 1, because now the frogs are coming out of the water and going into the land, going into the houses. So you see how it was reversed. Plus, when you look at the word amphibian means living both, or amphi is both, and baya or bios is life. Okay, kind of like living a double life. Okay, so the number 3 is the plague of gnats, or lice or flies. Okay, actually flies is the 4th plague, the specific flies. Now gnats are like insects smaller than flies. So then the gnats in chapter 8 of verse 16, Moshe was told to strike the ground, strike the dust, and from the dust these gnats will appear. And so in Genesis 2:7, we know that man came out of the dust from the ground. And so the reverse of this is now Moshe is striking the dust, and it turned into gnats, and they will be pestering both man and beast. So instead of life coming out of the ground, death comes out of the ground to cover Egypt. Then number 4 is the plague of flies. Now we know that flies, they like to eat rotten things. Okay, I found this in the internet, and it says flies eat rotten things like dead animals, feces, garbage, and as they crawl around on that stuff, they pick up germs and spread them wherever they land. Now flies are decomposers, and so when the plague of the flies came, what Yah is proving to Egypt and to all the people there, that there is this abundance of decomposition and death. So instead of multiplying, okay, life multiplying, life increasing and growing, see, Egypt is to decompose, and there's gonna be death in there, because the presence of flies mean that there is decomposing matter. So there is death. Okay, and then number 5. Number 5 is Exodus 9, and this is the plague of the livestock. So the livestock will die. So cattle, camels, donkeys, their animals will die. And what's interesting here is in Exodus 9:5, where it says, and Yahweh set an appointed time. Now, the word appointed time is the same one you see in Genesis 1:14, where when he created the moon, the sun, the stars, right? So he set them for his signs and his appointed times. And the word is moed or moedim. And when he sent this 5th plague, he actually set an appointed time, okay, to do that. So this is an appointment of death instead of life. Number 6, the plague of boils. This is in chapter 9 verse 8. So then boils, Moshe was told to get like the ashes from the oven, the furnace. Okay, so he took that and he was told to blow it in the air, and when it came down, it became boil. So there are sores on man, both man and beast. Okay, and then when you look at the word boil, which is in Hebrew is shekhin, it's actually a reverse of the word nakash. So the nakash is the word for serpent, and while here the word is shekhin. So there is that, even in the words, there is that what they call it, a palindrome, right? Okay, number 7, plague of hail. Now hail is in chapter 9 verse 10. This is the 7th plague and the last intro of the 3rd triad. Okay, and this is what Yahweh said in verse 14, which is interesting to me, because it says, for at this time I am sending all my plagues unto your heart. So it's specific that it is being sent actually to the heart of Pharaoh and to the heart of the servants and the people of Egypt, because all along Pharaoh is contradicting and going against. He would say, Moshe, I'm going to set the people free, but then after the plague is gone, he would just go back and keep the people. And so here in the 7th plague, I believe that God allowed Pharaoh to go on his own path of destruction. So now the plagues are being sent into the heart of the people. And so here, when we look at hail is like ice that comes from heaven, but the Bible says that it's not just hail, it comes with fire. And so if it falls on the earth, what's going to be affected? It's going to affect tree life, right? So your trees. Now remember, in the 5th plague, there is the death of the livestock. So then now here, what's being affected? See, in Tagalog, napeste na yung mga halaman. Okay, so there is pestilence among the trees. So how are they going to eat? How are they going to survive now, right? And so instead of the land being blessed, because that's what we see in Genesis 1:11, where the earth bring forth grass and plants and fruit trees and all that. But then here, plant life is going to die. So the land's blessing turns into curse. Okay, plague number 8 is the plague of the locust. And so the plague of the locusts, this is going to cover the whole land. And we know how devastating it is to be attacked by locusts, because it only takes a minute. It takes a few minutes to destroy a whole field or destroy a whole crop. And so here, what the hail did not destroy, the locust will destroy. And so in Exodus 10:13, it says that Yahweh brought an east wind. The word is ruach. As the same language that you will find in Genesis 1:2, where you will see the Spirit hovering over the face of the deep, as the same word, ruach. And so here, the wind, the ruach, brought about decimation and disorder. So complete disorder, complete decimation. Next one is the plague of darkness. And this darkness is in 10:21, chapter 10, verse 21, it says, and Yahweh said to Moshe, stretch out your hand toward the heavens and let there be darkness. And that's the complete opposite of what Yah started creating. Because in the beginning, he said, let there be light. There is tohu vavohu, there is wild and wasteland. Okay, but when God decided to create, he put order. He created order. When he said light, light means light, or in Hebrew, but or also means order. Okay, so let there be order, let there be light. But here, Exodus 10:21 says, let there be darkness. So what's the opposite of order? Disorder. Now, what's interesting with this kind of darkness is the darkness which is felt. Can you imagine feeling darkness? See, a lot of people are afraid of the dark, right? And it feels like heavy. But this one you can actually feel, because that's what it says there. Even a darkness which is felt, Exodus 10:21. And so here we see that there is absence of light, except in the place of the Hebrews. Last and final plague is the plague of the firstborn. So this is the death of the firstborn. And so here, the people were commanded to kill a lamb and put the blood of the lamb on the doorpost, on the lintel of the door. So in Exodus 12:29, it says, and it came to be at midnight that Yahuwah struck. Not the word struck is the word nakah, or it means crush. So it seems like, because the angel of death is going to enter to destroy the firstborn of every house. Okay, but if he finds the blood on the doorpost, this angel is going to pass from that house. Now we see here that it says in Exodus that God is going to not allow the destroyer to get into the house that has the blood of the lamb on the doorpost. Okay, so it seems like God is actually covering that house so that the destroyer is not going to enter. Okay, but here, if he enters, it's kind of like him like bringing this baseball bat, right? And then he's just gonna struck and crush the firstborn. Okay, and so and that is very, very intense. And so here we find that inside the house, inside the bait, is the mark of life. Okay, so there is the boundary that the angel of death or the destroyer is not able to cross because of that blood. And so the 10th plague actually means not only because the death of the firstborn is very devastating, it's very sad, because you can actually hear, according to the Bible, you hear Egypt in mourning and in grief, and they're screaming and crying, okay, at midnight. Okay, and so here, it's not only that, but it's a picture of God telling us, come back home, right? This is the plague where it says, for the people who trust and believe in Yahuwah and in the power of the blood of the Lamb, okay? And that's Yahushua, okay? And he's telling us, come back home, because now they're ready to come out of Egypt and go back where they came from. And that is the promised land, and the blood of the Lamb made that passable. And so I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and enjoy the rest of the week. Enjoy your Shabbat, and I'll see you again next week. And we're going to have another very interesting lesson. And so I hope you stay happy and stay healthy. Shabbat Shalom.